Hey, this is Kenyon Drake. You're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in.
All right.
That wasn't so bad.
No, I'd say you're back. I'd say you're back at it.
Thursday, April 2nd. Andy, Mike, and Jason excited to be with you. Once again, very exciting episode. Our early top 10 running back ranking show. Excited to get into it. Some news. We've got a pants check once again. Jason, pants on, off. What do we got?
Today I am wearing both pants and underpants. I am grown up. I had to leave the house, ran down to the studio. We've gotten a lot of grief lately, Andy, you and I. Mike has this cool, look at his cool man cave setup, studio.
He's got guitars. He's got a keyboard.
So,
he's got big old amplifiers in the background.
We committed to trying to make ours look like his, and so we went out, picked up some stuff, did our best job of being cool. Like Mike, I think we did it. I think our backgrounds look excellent, maybe even better than Mike's now. Yeah,
I would love to get Mike's take because he's the resident cool cat, of the group. But did we do all right?
Look, I'm pretty impressed. I'm impressed. All those things you talked about that I have that are cool, you have all of them now.
I know. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, thank you, man. That means a lot. You can check them out. YouTube.com/TheFantasyFootballers. Subscribe, click the bell, check out how Jason and I have outfitted ourselves at home.
This is so stupid.
Here's a quick question for you guys. It's from Twitter. What's the best landing spot for a rookie wide receiver in this year's draft? And I know when I dove into this a little bit, it took me a while when looking at the draft board to really find a destination that I loved. Arizona's kind of been removed. That would have been the one that I kind of honed in on before the Hopkins trade. But it took me a while. So where did you end up for a best destination?
Well, I'll jump in. I wanted to find, where's a spot that has a younger quarterback he's a franchise quarterback. It's not just even we think he is. He's the franchise quarterback. He's excellent. He's had monster fantasy production. This quarterback before he has had enough production to have his wide receiver be a top 5 wide receiver, and that is Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans, who need a freaking wide receiver now. And look, they're in a really good spot to get a number 1, where I think Will Fuller is actually an excellent wide receiver. I don't think that he is a number 1 type of guy. They
or
need
capable
number
of
1
playing 16 games.
Sure, it's really hard to imagine that the way that his career has gone, but Houston needs a number 1 wide receiver to go along with Stills and with Kenny Bills and Will Fuller. So the Houston Texans are my pick.
Mike? Yes.
I hope we hear that drop a lot this year.
We might. I mean,
if Kenny Stills finally becomes something, Jason and I
the pants check will need to happen for the rest of the season.
The odds are not in your favor. They are a team right now with a number of 2s and 3s. So it's an interesting the Hopkins trade stole the headlines, but
he's there.
That's what I mean. That's why I said 2s and 3s.
Right. Okay.
You see what I said?
Yeah.
For me, it was the Eagles at 21 because it follows some of the logic that you just brought up about Watson. You have a team that was 9th in the NFL in pass attempts last year. Nobody is under the illusion that Alshon Jeffrey or Deshaun Jackson are the future at the wide receiver position for Philadelphia. So Eagles at 21, some of these other teams possibly passing on some of the top-tier rookie wide receivers. They can build around a new number 1 in Philadelphia. So that's where I went.
I would have gone Philadelphia as well. You say it was a hard question for you. For me, it was pretty easy, but I ended up where you are, which is the Eagles. But because you already had them down, I'd throw a third team out there, which is the Colts. The Colts, I don't believe they have a good enough number 2. Now, some people really believe in Paris Campbell. He's the truth. I didn't really love him last year coming in. He wasn't one of my favorite prospects. And then you had mostly a missed season due to injury. And teams don't always wait around, even if they spent capital. I mean, we've seen this in the past, first, second round wide receivers that get injured or lose their first year, and they don't always pan out. And so I think that getting a Phillip Rivers in there at quarterback, they could use a better number 2. Not, I wouldn't ever expect someone to come in and be the number 1 there. And I do, despite the Phillip Rivers signing, think that the Colts have a good general manager, which matters to me as far as like longevity and future and what they're going to do to replace him later. So if I'm picking spots for wide receivers I like, I wouldn't mind them going to Indianapolis.
Did you guys see the news about Frank Reich and the due diligence he had done on Tom Brady, watching the film from the past 2 years? So it should tell people something when very trusted offensive minds, Frank Reich, Bruce Arians, are fighting over Tom Brady. I think it did for me. Frank Reich, they were going to make a really strong pitch. He talked about the fact that Brady's lost nothing in the film work that he looked at over the last couple of years. It was interesting to me. Obviously, they ended up with Phillip Rivers, but it'll be interesting to see what Rivers can do under Frank Reich, and they could definitely use a couple more weapons. A reminder, we've got a giveaway, footclangiveaway.com, a signed Keenan Allen jersey. I want to thank everybody genuinely over at jointhefoot.com, everybody that's been supporting this show, especially at times like this when we're kind of living day to day, are we not? I mean, it's
no, days don't exist anymore.
Hour to hour? I don't know.
There is morning and nighttime. That's all I know about.
So many people out there adjusting their routines, their lives, their livelihoods. So many people suddenly stay-at-home teachers, and we certainly appreciate everybody that is and has begun supporting us at jointhefoot.com. And this show is coming out on a Thursday. We do an extra episode every Thursday for the Foot Clan. Only mailbag questions from the Foot Clan.
Well, and the Foot Clan also heard this show on Wednesday.
That's true. They got a little early.
Yeah, we'll sneak.
So they got their thank you a little early.
That's right.
And you can find us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. Let's get into some news.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, the NFL. This was big news. They've officially expanded the postseason to 14 teams.
What took them so long?
For the 2020-2021 season. So not this year, but every conference will now have a third wild card game. Or I'm sorry,
yes,
a third wild card.
That's this year.
Yeah, that's this year, the 2020-2021 season. There is a
You forgot what year it was. I don't blame you.
I definitely honed in on the 2021 part.
No,
okay.
That is this year. What's funny is the way it was brought up was the NFL has this option that they can expand the postseason, add 2 games in wild card weekend, but they're going to have to take some time to figure it out. And you're like, the NFL can add 2 games to the playoffs. You think they aren't going to figure that out in about 5 hours? That's so much extra money for them.
Before the
I don't
CBA
like
was,
it. By the way,
what?
Oh, come on. Boo. This system was perfect.
It was so good already.
He will scream at his TV as he watches extra playoff football.
Let me give you the caveat here. I like it from a more football standpoint, like I do all more football things. I don't like it from the reality standpoint that, look, if you have a bye, which will now only be 1 team, it is going to be what did you say, Jason?
Per conference.
Yeah.
Each
Certainly,
team.
Yes. I understand it's not just
I'm
one
just saying,
in the
you
entire
said one
NFL.
team. Yeah, so
Yes, 1 team per conference instead of 2. It is a massive advantage to have that number 1 spot. That's all I'm saying. That team has a massive advantage over everybody else, and it's up to you individually whether you think that's good or bad or ugly. It's just that is a huge advantage. Every Super Bowl participant the last 7 years has received a bye. We know the value of the bye, and now it only goes to 1 team.
Well,
yeah, massive advantage, and great for fantasy football people that you
more
don't
competitive later.
Yeah, you don't have a team who's the number 2 seed that's just going to rest on their laurels because they know they have the bye week locked up. And they're like, it's not that important to get to number one. Now they have to get to number one to get the bye week. And
at the bottom,
I'm very happy about it.
At the bottom, think about the last few weeks leading up to the playoffs, and you look at the teams still in the hunt. And sometimes it's like, with 3 weeks left to go, it's pretty much just one of these two teams are going to get the wild card. Now, those several weeks out with 7 teams making it, that you're going to have more teams that are really playing for playoff hopes. I think that's good for football. I think that's good for fantasy. And I will say this, Andy, I was a diehard basketball fan my whole life. There were a couple things I just hated about
before
the NBA.
Before you retired.
Before I retired from my
fandom?
No, from my NFL dream, my NBA dreams.
You've spent more years saying you used to be a fan than the years you actually were a fan. That's where you're at now.
How dare you?
That's where you're at now.
That is not where I'm at yet.
Your badge of honor is what you used to be in the NBA.
Oh my goodness, that is disrespectful. It was yeah. But my point is, they have too many people make the playoffs. The worst teams that get in, they've got no chance. They stink, and I think that the parity in the NFL and the percentage of teams that are making it is still very competitive and great.
I'm feeling a decent amount of peer pressure to change my opinion on this one.
Good. Come to the right side.
And you guys make some compelling arguments about. I certainly want, for fantasy's sake, the league to be more competitive longer, fighting for wild card spots and fighting for the bye week, not having those things locked in. It probably does help fantasy owners. So peer pressure.
That's all we care about.
We got 'em.
Success. Okay. Speaking Tuesday, NFL executives confirmed the league is fully directed. What a phrase that is. Fully directed towards playing a normal 16-game season with a full postseason in 2020. I'm fully directed towards them doing that.
I am
concur.
Full direction on that.
Be careful.
Yeah, no, I mean, here's the thing. There are a lot of people, even in some circles that are screaming and crying and clawing at this, like, what, you got to have other plans. But the NFL, it has time and time again through through free agency, through the draft process, every single time that people are like, you got to prepare, you can't do, they're like, we are playing the NFL and getting our money. And,
Well, look, it's the public pressure is one thing. Having, there's a large amount of time between April 2nd and the beginning of September to adjust. You don't have to make a knee-jerk reaction. You have to make a right and wise reaction, but you have time to make that. And I think that's what the NFL and Roger Goodell has put forth. They said, hey, can we make the draft safe? Yes, we can make the draft safe. We'll proceed with the draft. There are implications that go, we think of it from the side of, the NFL wants to protect its revenue. Well, you know what? The players want to get paid money. They have jobs. They have a limited career span. So I think it's in everybody's interest to keep as much on the table for as long as possible. They've got a lot of time for it. We're all fully directed towards the NFL season.
Yes, we are.
All right. Anthony Lynn, Chargers head coach, said Tyrod Taylor is, quote, in the driver's seat, but nothing is finalized.
Oof. On my dynasty team. Let's go.
You guys know how old Tyrod Taylor is by chance, off the top of your head?
Ooh, I don't. I would guess 28.
He's 30 years old. So.
Wow. All right.
He feels like he's gone full life cycle of an NFL quarterback
a bit, yeah,
before the age of 30, but he is still young, and we'll see what happens. That'll mean a lot to Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler.
He did great things for Baker Mayfield, and I hope he does great things for whoever this rookie they draft in the first round will be.
I'm not going to relitigate the Tyrod Taylor circumstances of days gone by. No one remembers that. All right, this news so far out of The Athletic, Jeff Howe talking about Jarrett Stidham.
Oh, on my dynasty team.
Thank you, Mike. You have all the superstars.
You must have a really good dynasty team, Mike.
My quarterback situation is dire.
Barring unforeseen circumstances, he's got the inside track at the Patriots job. I was asked this question. You guys were asked this question a couple of weeks ago. To me, it just made logical sense that they were going to turn to Stidham and trust their scouting, the draft process, the time.
They cut Cody Kessler as well.
Yeah, and they paid Brian Hoyer like $1 million.
Oh, yeah, he's on my dynasty team.
Oh my goodness!
Yes, this is real dynasty season.
This is real dynasty season when Mike and I are basically our teams are vying for the starting role of the Patriots quarterback.
Well, if we had a Taysom Hill story, I could get involved in this process. But no, I think it will be Stidham's opportunity. He does have the advantage of being, at practice, part of the scout team, playing against that top-tier defense. I don't know if they need a lot from a quarterback to still be a pretty decent team this year.
Yeah, their defense is great.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess dynasty-wise, that would be the name to pay attention to for your team, as painful as that might seem right now.
Not Jalen Hurts?
Not yet.
Yeah. Just
we'll
wait.
See.
Yeah, we could talk about Jalen Hurts sometime. The Athletics, Ed Bouchette predicts the Steelers. This one, I don't know if this is news.
It's just fun to talk about projections. Look, sports aren't happening right now, so let's just get into heated debates about this for no reason.
He predicted the Steelers are going to let Juju Smith-Schuster walk following the 2020 season. He's 23 years old. He had a very bad year last year. There were reasons externally, but it doesn't, change the output. They had similar problems with James Conner. The prediction is that, Juju's going to want to get paid like a top-tier number one, and the Steelers, I think we've seen evidence that they don't always want to do that. So it could come to a head. Now, I think it just depends on whether Juju has a good year.
100%.
If Juju has a good year, they'll probably pay him, and if he doesn't, he'll probably still want all that money, and they won't pay him.
Yeah, that's all this is. He's one of the leaders in the locker room and the community already at a young age. So if he comes out and has a good year, they're going to keep him around as one of the main faces of the franchise. If he comes out and stinks and still wants great money, they'll let him walk. So really, this is just – I think this is the Athletics, Ed Bouchette saying, I don't think Juju's going to have a good year.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
That's the only way that if he comes out and dominates, they're not going to let him walk.
It's certainly one of the bigger stories this year as to whether Big Ben, the Steelers, that offense, especially like we talk about it being related to Big Ben and him returning and being old Big Ben. But this team identity has changed too. Old Big Ben might not need to come back for them to succeed. You might just need pretty good Big Ben and lower passing volume offense, and that could be an outcome. They could be a good team with a lower pass volume because of what their defense has been able to mature into.
They need old Big Ben to be rookie Big Ben. They just come in, be a game manager.
The great news for Juju is, as Amari Cooper has shown, you just have to be great about half the time, and you can still get $20 million a year.
Okay, that is a strong point. All right, I added this piece of news in here because I wanted to talk about it. We're looking for direction in Denver for the running back situation. On Tuesday, John Elway offered, quote, tepid words on a potential Philip Lindsay contract extension. I wanted to bring this up because Lindsay's in a very unique situation, very similar to what Austin Eckler was in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Now,
Melvin Gordon possibly in front of him.
Yeah, that's ironic. But you have, from a contract standpoint, undrafted, proven themselves, not necessarily an every down running back, explosive, but defining the contract parameters of a player like that are difficult. You guys talked to Austin Eckler on this show a little while ago, and he was quick to admit it didn't look like he was getting a contract. And then things came together. So the team has to, because they valued him as an offensive weapon, not just as a every down running back. But when you combine the decision to sign Melvin Gordon with this information, it makes you wonder if the contract situation will phase Lindsay out of the offense potentially, or that is a possible outcome. How do you guys view this, or is that overstating it?
I don't think that the contract situation will affect the usage of Philip Lindsay. I don't think he resigns with Denver, and I really hope that Lindsay gets paid somewhere. I mean, he's not going to make, the Gurley Zeke money, but hopefully he can play his way into an Austin Eckler type of contract.
Eckler money.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great for Lindsay.
Yeah, and he's just been a very dynamic, invaluable player to that team. So it'd be nice to see him rewarded for that.
Yeah, the whole draft process is just that's a tough one. That is a tough one for an athlete like Phillip Lindsay and Eckler, where it's clear, it's very clear that the NFL teams just screwed up, and because they screwed up and didn't evaluate his talent properly, they got screwed and had to play these years on no money.
Think about this though, and this is getting very almost a conspiracy theorist avenue.
Ooh, all right. Nice.
But when you look at a situation with a player that has a contract on the way, and then you look at the team paying Melvin Gordon, and you say, well, why'd you spend that money, or how'd you pay? You have to wonder if the contract to Melvin Gordon doesn't drive down the future contract for Phillip Lindsay.
It certainly could.
In that situation too, where you save, maybe your total savings is better than you think, even though you paid a guy like Melvin Gordon. I don't know.
That's a good point.
Before we get into the top 10 running back rankings, want to thank today's sponsor, Manscaped. Look, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're stuck inside the house with your significant other, you need to be paying attention to this. You still got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your hygiene, man.
Now more than ever.
Talking to you, Jason.
I used it on my neck.
Good. Whatever, man. Look,
my neck was looking. I was going full on mullet. I thought this was the month of mullets, and I didn't want that to happen.
Look, Manscaped is helping you out. It's the only men's brand dedicated to below the waist grooming and hygiene. And right now they have the Perfect Package 3.0. It's a kit. It comes with the Lawnmower 3.0, which is waterproof, a cordless body trimmer, and they got a bunch of other liquid formulations to round out the manscaping routine. It uses nick-free advanced skin-safe technology, and subscribers are going to get a new replacement blade refill for your lawnmower trimmer delivered to your door every 3 months. And for a limited time, subscribers get 2 free gifts, the Shed travel bag and the high-performance anti-chafing Manscaped boxer briefs.
I've got it all. I've got it all.
Look,
I just got a new package.
I'm still using my Lawnmower 3.0. I'm making sure that things are they're right and they're tight. We'll just put it that way. Things
even under quarantine.
Even under quarantine. Quarantine does not give you an excuse to look like you're living in the 1910s. I don't know how people looked back then, but I'm making
they
it
didn't have
general.
Manscaped back then, that's for sure.
That's really close to the last quarantine too. So you almost zoned in on there.
Sure. So you get 20% off and free shipping with the code footballers at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code footballers. Help your relationship out during this quarantine. Your partner and your body will thank you.
All right, we're moving on.
Running backs.
All right, it's time. The early top 10 running back rankings. Very excited to get into this. We've each individually ranked our top, I think we ranked maybe the top 24 as of right now, April, heading into the 2020 season. And we've got our consensus top 10 rankings. Anybody have a guess who might end up at the top of the list?
Let's say this. He's not the consensus number one.
He's the consensus number one. He's not the unanimous number
unanimous.
one.
Thank you.
That would be Christian McCaffrey. And you are correct. I do have him at number 2. Jason, Mike, you both have him at number 1. He is our consensus number 1. Last year, absolutely ridiculous. The most consistent running back that you could ever hope for or imagine. Ran for over 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, and then 116 receptions.
He was a
targets.
beast, man. It's the third time a running back has ever done the 1,000. It's McCaffrey, Marshall Faulk, and Roger Craig. It's a historical performance this past year. And when I took a look at what McCaffrey did, honestly, the rushing totals and the yardage and things like that, it doesn't feel like an outlier, what he was able to do with that work. I mean, the 15 touchdowns possibly could be an outlier. But the big questions for McCaffrey are, you have Teddy Bridgewater now. You have head coach Matt Ja Rule coming in, changing up the system. What does it look like? And I can't speak exactly to what Ja is going to try and implement, but I took a look at Teddy Bridgewater, because what we want to know is how much work is Christian McCaffrey going to get through the air? That's the huge story for McCaffrey. And I went back and I looked at Teddy Bridgewater's targets in 2014, so his first year. 23% of his targets went to the running back position. The following year, 19.5%. And then last year in his short stint where he actually saw playing time, 23.5% of his targets went to the running back position. That's all good. So that means if Christian McCaffrey is seeing the snap totals, he at least has a quarterback who's going to distribute 20+% of his targets to the running back position, which that's very positive news for me. I hadn't gone through those numbers yet, so I'm still very bullish on what CMC is going to do.
Well, and also think about the offensive coordinator they're bringing in from LSU. A lot of love given to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in his receiving work at LSU. That's the system, and they did pass. So you've got both a system and a quarterback that look like they're willing to pass the ball to the running back. The question is the snap percentages. I don't think that will be anywhere near where he was. And so if you want to take him off that number one pedestal, it's rare for running backs to finish as the number one running back multiple years in a row. So if you're just going statistical odds on that alone, it probably won't be Christian McCaffrey who ends up number one.
That's pretty much why he wasn't number one for me. It was part the offense changing, I don't think 141 targets is reasonable again. And then we've talked to some people specifically around Matt Rule, talking about him pretty intensely scouting the running back class coming into this year, recognizing the fact that you can't do what you did with Christian McCaffrey indefinitely. And yes, it seems like because he made it through a season unscathed, that's somehow validation that you can do that every single year. I don't think you can.
Well, basically two. I mean, because he was a dominant workhorse last year as well.
Yeah, he finished number 3 at the position in 2018, number 1 last year. He's going to be in the top 3. I have him at 2. I mean, we're splitting hairs on the finish.
Sure, right.
But I don't think you're going to have a season with the total. He might still end up as the number 1 running back in fantasy, but I don't think your total point output is going to match what he did last year personally. With all the transition changes, they've added some more to the wide receiver core, and then some of the things that you talked about. Will he have an incredible year? I'm sure. Will he be consistent? I'm sure he will. He's amazing. So
yes,
it's just a matter of whether Ja Rule comes in and murders the snap percentage for CMC.
Yeah, 44% of his total fantasy production was via the air. So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, he would have been the 8th in targets among wide receivers. So take away his rushing work, and he was a great wide receiver, which is what made him so valuable and will make him so valuable. You get 2 players in 1 slot in a fantasy league. He's definitely worth whatever you're going to pay, even if he finishes number 2, because he's not going to finish number 2 or number 3 because he stinks. It's just going to be because other players had monstrous seasons that were even better.
All right, our number 2 consensus running back, it's Saquon Barkley. I have him ranked at number 1 overall. Again, splitting hairs. Jason has him at 2. Mike, you have him at 3. From week 7 on last year, you got more vintage Saquon. The year before, he was the number 2 at the position. Last year, we know limited by injury, but he was the RB5 from week 7 on. There are only a handful of players, I think we all recognize this, with the workload plus passing game work that can put you in the echelon or in the upper echelon of the position and give you the opportunity to finish at number 1. Mike, you have him at 3, but do you still consider Saquon to be a number 1 overall potential type of player?
I don't have a problem with it at all. He's at number 3 for me. Very limited sample size of him playing with Daniel Jones. But that's all I can go off of right now. And the 16-game pace of targets when Saquon played with Daniel Jones was 88 targets, which is still great, but that's not 121 targets like he saw his rookie year, where Eli was essentially pulling the old Andy's playing the piano. Where Eli Manning was doing his best old man quarterback routine and checking it down to Saquon all the time, where Daniel Jones is more willing to drive the ball down the field.
I apologize for playing the pretend piano in the middle of what you're saying. And yes, right. the evidence we have with Jones, I mean, we need Jones he's got to take a step forward in the offense, obviously. You only go so far based on your quarterback. What about Jason Garrett as the offensive coordinator now in New York? Jason, you have Barkley at 2. You see him as the next best guy behind CMC.
I think he'll get more passing work than Ezekiel Elliott will, and that's all it is. But these two guys are, between Christian McCaffrey, Saquon, and Zeke, those are the top three backs, and it's an order of who's going to get the most receptions. That's my tiebreaker, and I believe it'll be CMC with the most, Saquon with the second most, Zeke with the third most. That's how I ordered them.
Sure.
They're all excellent on the ground. Any one of these guys could finish as the number one, and these guys have had bad stretches as well. You talk about quintessential Saquon from week 7 on. During that stretch, he was the running back 5, which isn't bad, but you're hoping for him to be great, to be a true difference maker that you won't find anywhere else. And the nice thing about Jason Garrett coming in is that when he's got a star back, he's going to let that back be the star. So it does, Jason Garrett, while he might get mocked profusely in most media circles outside of Dallas for all sorts of things, including his clapping, he does provide a little bit of confidence that you don't have to be scared that he's going to bring in some timeshare. He's not going to do that with Saquon.
All right, and then and he left this guy, and that's our number 3 overall, Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke has been a pillar of consistency.
Yep.
Both in occasional offseason drama, but fantasy finishes. Number 2, number 10, number 5, number 4. That number 10, by the way, in only 10 games. So when he plays, you're getting great performances. We've said it before, the one kind of, disappointing factor to Zeke last year was you did not win weeks because of Zeke's, monster performances. He never finished above number 4 on any given week, which was strange because he never finished outside the top 24 at all on any given week, which even CMC did one time. So the pillar of consistency didn't have the passing game work that matched up to the year before, but still, what more can you say about Ezekiel Elliott?
The one thing I want to bring up about Zeke is the somewhat unexpected retiring of Travis Frederick, who played center for the Dallas Cowboys and was an elite center in the NFL for his entire career, except the 2 years ago where he had to miss. So that's a question for me. I know I still have Zeke up here at number 2, but that is a question. We've seen time and time again the impact that an all-star center has on a running game, because they're up there checking blocking patterns, calling out who's the mic, where are the hot reads coming in from, and can they get someone who's competent enough that they won't miss a beat? It is a fair question.
From a decision making on the field standpoint, I think they're going to miss him a ton. I do think we didn't have elite physical Frederick for a couple of years now.
Well, 2 years ago he didn't play, and you had Zeke finish as a top 5 back.
Sure.
So that's where it comes down to me of the how involved is he going to be in the passing game, and I've got him third of this group. He's as a pure runner, I think he's probably the best in the NFL. And behind, Andy does not agree. I think Zeke is powerful, is fast.
No, I think he's a great runner. I don't think he's the best in the NFL. That's all.
Who's the best?
Yeah,
I think it's Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley is the best between the tackles runner.
That's fair. Splitting hairs between those guys, but the consistency that Zeke does provide, not just this last year, but over his career, pretty much nobody in modern day football since LaDainian Tomlinson finishes outside the top 24 less frequently than Zeke. He is not ever going to hurt your team. He's always out there unless he's suspended. So,
fair.
If
you're wanting to be risk adverse, Zeke is the way to go.
And let's get into some more interesting names here. Number 4, we have Dalvin Cook coming in at number 4. I'm at 5. Jason and Mike, you both have him at 4. Obviously, a tremendous year last year, especially weeks 1 through 14. He finished 5th at the position overall. We've talked about Kubiak and
Kubes,
his input into the system, and now taking over. So Dalvin Cook, have you looked at Dalvin in light of Diggs' departure? Is that a consideration?
Dalvin Cook might be the biggest winner of the trade.
That's what I'm wondering.
All. And I'm not even necessarily saying his usage is going to go way up. I'm saying they can actually extend him now. Like
right.
that has been a problem is the Vikings have no money. They would clearly want to extend Dalvin
I thought
Cook,
you meant height-wise. I thought like you'd get stretch him out.
Sure. Well, yeah. But they actually have money now. Andy shakes his head at his own joke. Yes! I couldn't save you. I couldn't think of anything witty enough. But Dalvin Cook can actually get paid now by the Minnesota Vikings, so we'll see if the contract talks start to heat up as he goes into the last year of his deal. But Dalvin Cook,
53
really steady.
receptions.
Yeah, really steady. Obviously didn't play the last couple games of the season and still had the third most goal line carries, second in fantasy points per game, fourth most evaded tackles. Dalvin Cook, very, very good. Receives huge opportunity on a solid team. So he's number 4 for me.
Yeah, if it wasn't for his kind of injury history here, where he got injured at the end of last year, he was injured in college, he was injured the year before, he's had an ACL tear. Dalvin Cook is as good. He would be in that tier if he's been playing 16 games. His 16-game pace before he got injured last year was 1,364 yards and 16 touchdowns. That's just on the ground, adding another 619 through the air on 62 receptions. So this is a true workhorse back. On a per-game basis, he's as good as anyone. He's the bottom of the top guys for me solely because of injury risk. But the Kubiak upgrade is it's no joke. I mean, obviously he was there last year. I think he was implementing a lot of what you saw, and the running game was taking off with those numbers. But now as the offensive coordinator, there are certain coaches out there that just have a long enough track record. When you've got the last name Shanahan, and Kubiak was essentially part of that system way back in the day, they know how to open up lanes for their running backs, and so I'm a big Dalvin Cook believer coming into this year. If it wasn't for him missing the playoffs last year, there'd be arguments for being in that top pick. Yeah.
Let me ask you a difficult to answer question, because you said he's at the end of the top tier. Would you consider Dalvin Cook safe?
No.
Mike?
I would. Yeah.
Okay.
And mine is based
You guys
solely
want to
on
fight? You guys want to fight each other?
Injury. Solely on injury risk.
I started chuckling during Jason's monologue there, but nothing because of what Jason was saying. I just really looked at you guys again as you're sitting in my room.
Actually, I started looking at it too, Mike. I think Jason, now that I'm looking at it, I think Jason copied a lot of what you did with your office.
I mean, I tried to
It looks so similar to me now that I'm looking at it.
I tried my best to put things in the same spots. I tried to get them in the same spots to where the perspective would be similar, and I think I did a good job.
Oh man!
All right. Number 5, Alvin Kamara.
You guys should go grab one of those guitars off the wall.
Yeah, just give me a minute, Mike. I've got to do this.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, what? I have my questions about Alvin Kamara heading into the year.
Really?
Yeah, because you do have, you have a situation, it's not exactly on par with Beckham and the injury, because obviously, but it kind of is. I mean, you came in with very, very high expectations. This is the number 3 running back from 2017, number 4 in 2018, drops to 12 last year in 14 games. Inconsistency, didn't look like the same guy on the field, which Jason would mention repeatedly through the year. Then it comes out after the fact that he says his leg was 75% healthy. That's not high enough for my leg. You know what I mean? I need my leg up at 90, 95%.
So I needed my leg at about 87. 87 and I'm good to go.
What percentage are your legs, Jason?
My legs are usually at 100%.
Okay.
Right now they're atrophying because of the lock-in. So I would say they're at 89% right now.
Can I ask you? Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Did you know that just because you're locked into your house, like you could still like do squats and jumps and go up and down your stairs and stuff?
Well, I do go up and down my stairs.
They're not locking you out of that.
No, I do go up and down my stairs. The kitchen is downstairs, bed is upstairs. It's a requirement. Those are my two favorite things.
You haven't made like a storage area up in your bedroom yet?
Oh, what dedicated? A brilliant idea.
I thought he was going to put an inflate-a-bed in the kitchen. See, I went the other direction.
Really, the correct answer here for proper space utilization is one of those little lifts that takes me up the stairs.
Oh, no. No, that is a full, like, you have to qualify for one of those, you have to fill out your will. I mean, that's part of the qualifying procedure.
Yeah, they would qualify me. I can get one. I verified.
They would qualify me. I was going to ask a similar question if you had, gotten some exercise outdoors yet in this quarantine time.
So, on that note, we actually did just get a couple scooters, electric powered scooters,
Those are not exercise.
But I feel like it is. I feel when I go around the block that I am exercising. And it really is.
The wind's blowing in my face.
It's a mental exercise. But I am so sad that I can't burn calories doing that.
Mm-hmm. Can you pretend when you're using it? Can you pretend you're using your foot to push yourself?
Can't you push an electric scooter still?
I mean, you can, but why would you do that?
You'd probably get hurt. All right, Alvin, back to Alvin Kamara. I do have my, obviously last year, disappointing 5 touchdowns on the ground. That was the story. But he only had four goal line carries, which was insane. 37th among the running back position. And, when we headed into last year, it was a very rumored statement, but I had heard it said that, look, they can't trust Alvin Kamara alone. Words about him being a little weak, and they needed a Latavius or an Ingram behind him came out. Kind of saw it last year. Don't really know why the team would want to put everything on him going into the new year, which is why he's a little bit lower on my rankings. Obviously, the team is great. We've talked about Drew Brees, how set up they are. Still like Alvin Kamara, but I do have I just don't know if the consistency you get with Alvin is going to be the same as other running backs.
Yeah, I mean, you saw over the first few weeks of the season some of the same Kamara that looked unbelievable. Just you can't tackle him like you can other guys, and he catches the ball so naturally. He had the 3rd most running back receptions, and he missed a couple of games there in the middle. I also buy into the leg issues for both him and Saquon. I said this several times through the year. When they got that high ankle sprain, they came back after a couple missed weeks. They didn't look the same for another 4 or 5 weeks. And, Saquon was even talking about it was very difficult mentally to trust the leg for certain moves. And then at the end of the season, both Saquon and Alvin Kamara looked great again. It was like they were championship, league winners in those final weeks. And so maybe it really was the leg issue. You brought it up already, Andy, the 5 touchdowns. His touchdown rate was unsustainably high the previous year, and the pendulum swung way to the other side. I expect it to be right in the middle this coming year. And so because he has less volume in the running game, that's why I've got him at number 5 behind Dalvin Cook and the top 3. Cook and Kamara were very close as to who I would put ahead. That's kind of the second tier for me, these guys who do catch the ball but carry a little bit more risk. But I still think he's
171 carries last year.
Yeah,
what's wild about Alvin Kamara is 2 years ago when we talked about and he was elite, he was averaging just under 59 rushing yards per game. Last year, he averaged just under 57 rushing yards per game. He has finished with 81 receptions every year of his career. You just saw a big downturn.
81 on the dot?
81 on the dot.
That's all they book him for.
They don't crazy.
That's
it's
insane.
Crazy. But you saw the efficiency. You saw the big plays in the passing game go down, where 2 years ago it was 81 receptions and 709 receiving yards. Last year, 81 receptions, only 533 receiving yards. And then it's like that's the downtick in Alvin Kamara is big plays in the passing game and only 5 rushing touchdowns compared to 14. That's the difference to me. And to me, that's the injury. I'm buying completely into that, and I will be very happy with Alvin Kamara as my RB1.
Interesting. Okay. All right. 6 and 7 on our consensus list. Derrick Henry, and then Nick Chubb. I have Henry all the way up at 4. He got franchised.
Yeah,
this team's the entire the defining characteristic of this team is finding a way to get Derrick Henry 20 carries a game. I like that. It's a good thing for fantasy. Sure. 303 last year, 1,540 yards. We talked about the buying or selling of Henry or Chubb in up above 1,400 rushing yards. I don't know if he gets there, but I'm pretty sure he's getting double-digit touchdowns in this offense this year.
That's fair.
I know he's not involved in the passing game, but you just look at what he did from a consistency standpoint last year, regardless of the passing game work, 5th, 1st, 3rd, 5th, 5th, 1st, 7th, 3rd. He can still finish at the very top on a weekly basis without the receiving game work. So I'm expecting more of the same from Henry. That's why I'm at 4.
My questions for Derrick Henry completely come down to, are they right about Ryan Tannehill? I mean, that's the biggest question to me, because last year Derrick Henry was the running back 14 with Marcus Mariota, which is still solid. I mean, running back 14 is nothing to be upset about, but he jumps all the way up to the running back 2 in the games where he was playing with Ryan Tannehill. So that, because snaps went way up, rushing attempts went way up with Ryan Tannehill because they're winning games. So that's the biggest question. And then the offensive line with Conklin going to the Cleveland Browns and I know it's just one piece. I totally understand that, but an offensive line, they need congruency. They have to work as one. When you change in just one player, sometimes it screws up the entire chemistry of the offensive line. So will they be able to maintain that and still give him the protection he needs, or the running lanes that he needs to be the elite fantasy runner?
Yeah, I mean, if the expectation was that he's going to just continue to do what he did with Ryan Tannehill the last 2/3 of the year, then he would be the running back 1. Right. I mean, he would be on 20 touchdowns and 2,000 rushing yards. Who cares if he catches a pass all season? I don't think that is the expectation. You're right. Conklin was big to the right side of the line. They ran Derrick Henry more to the right than to the left, and he was most successful going around Conklin, but that doesn't mean he wasn't successful to the left, or he was always running to the right.
To the left.
Not to mention this team doesn't want to disrupt what they're paying Derrick Henry franchise money. So there's obviously, it can disrupt it, but you have to imagine that they believed it wouldn't, to do it, to let him go. But
yeah, when I looked at the running back rankings, because I think Derrick Henry is an outlier, a beast. We've talked about that. He's going to succeed and be awesome. He's going to have monstrous games. I know he can disappear if the game script were to go the wrong direction for him. Thankfully, I think that the Titans are a good team, and I think they're going to be, at the very least, in the majority of games, if not outright winning a lot of them. And so he's safe to me. But after that tier, those first 5 guys, that's where I felt comfortable putting the great running backs who aren't pass catchers, that being Derrick Henry and, for me, Nick Chubb. Those 2 guys who I worry about the receiving work, they're not listed as the best fantasy back. And this is where I'm comfortable spending that pick on a guy who might have game script worry.
Yeah, that was the hardest challenge for me, was deciding to put Henry up above Alvin Kamara, because of the dynamics of, PPR, half-point leagues. We talked about Henry in the offseason last year. What can you expect? But when you have a guy getting 300-plus carries, you certainly enter the outlier category. Nick Chubb, we've talked about him. Last year, 298 carries, 1,494 yards, and 8 touchdowns. We've talked about the dynamic with Kareem Hunt, Kevin Stefanski coming over. I think Chubb's going to be solid.
The aforementioned right tackle.
Yeah, I think Chubb is going to be a solid running back this year. Jason has him at 7. Mike and I have him at 8. But look, he's a great runner. He's a great runner, and so led the league with 7 games of at least 100 rushing yards. Big play ability. He could disappear and then all of a sudden break off a 55-yard run. And
I like when we just intentionally use the number.
Didn't. It was a total accident.
Uh-huh.
All right, so Did you guys have anything you want to talk about with Chubb?
I just wanted to bring it up because if you're following us on social media, I had tweeted this out a little bit ago, just researching, and if you had Nick Chubb, you certainly felt this. If you were watching the Cleveland Browns games, you certainly saw it. But his efficiency at the goal line, specifically carries inside the 5, comically bad. 15 carries for negative 14 yards inside the 5. Like, he only
still had a year where he finished at 7.
Yeah, he had 2 touchdowns.
Could have been number 1.
2 touchdowns on his carries inside the 15. Of players who had double-digit carries inside the 5 zone, they averaged a touchdown on 46% of those attempts, and Nick Chubb was down at 13%. And that 46%, that includes Nick Chubb bringing down the average.
I'm not putting that on Nick Chubb. That's where offensive lines go to win or lose, is on that goal line.
Yeah,
that offensive line was losing.
I'm not putting it all on Chubb.
No, look, the eyeball test matters here. Nick Chubb is awesome. Like, as a running back, he's great. He's strong. He's everything. The fact
he is mighty.
The fact that he didn't get those touchdowns but did get the opportunity, he's not going to lose that opportunity. That's his. He's going to succeed more than that percentage just by looking at NFL averages. Because he's not a bad back there. So I think that his touchdown volume could go way up. He's had 8 rushing touchdowns, each of the last 2 seasons. So I think he's certainly in a good position to be worthy of a high pick, even though he's not really the pass-catching guy, and he's going to be splitting a little bit more time like he did the second half of the season with Kareem Hunt.
Now, do you have concern that split could actually increase in Kareem Hunt's favor?
I think it could.
Like, they have an entire offseason to plan of, we know that Kareem Hunt is going to be on our team week 1. It's not where we have this system that we built and spent all this time on an offense when we know we can't even use it until halfway through the season. Like, it's possible that Hunt is in there more than he was last year.
It is possible he's in there a little bit more. But even with Hunt was pretty involved last year. Hunt wasn't just some throwaway piece that came in, for a couple plays here and there. He was in there, and during that time, Nick Chubb was still on pace for 1,382 rushing yards. So, okay, maybe he only gets 1,250 rushing yards, but his touchdown, based on that previous conversation, goes up. So I'm not worried. Kareem Hunt isn't scaring me off of Nick Chubb here at running back 7.
All right, in number 8, our consensus number 8 running back, Aaron Jones of the Packers. I've got him the lowest at number 10. Jason has him at 9. Mike at 7. I'm weary. I'm worried. The franchise record, 23 touchdowns in 18 games, including the playoffs. Obviously, those touchdown numbers were outlandish. 16 on the ground last year. No doubt that Aaron Jones is a great dynamic player, but the way he put up this number 2 overall finish was not the way that Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, Dalvin Cook put up their seasons. You had weeks 1, 6, 9, 12, 13, where he was outside the top 36. And then you had other weeks that he absolutely smashed in 1U weeks. Number 2 overall in week 2, number 1 in week 5, number 1 in week 8, number 2 in week 14. The Aaron Jones experience overall was very good, but you did have a different kind of production that was very touchdown dependent. Only 236 carries in 16 games. So I have him a little bit lower, expecting those touchdown totals to come down a little bit. The dynamics of this Green Bay offense, the trend of that Green Bay offense, I'm curious about where it's going to head. So I'm a little more leery than you are, Mike. Talk to me why you have him at 7.
Sure.
Compared to some of these other players.
So I went in when we were doing our overreaction show. I actually went in with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to disprove Aaron Jones and say why you shouldn't spend a really high pick on him. And then after going through all the research that I ended up looking at, I think that Aaron Jones can pretty much repeat what he did, especially what seems crazy. He can repeat in the area of touchdowns. Like, he had 13 attempts inside the 5. He was a trusted goal line running back. He turned those into 8 touchdowns, which that's basically the same touchdown success rate as Dalvin Cook. it's a lower percentage than Zeke. It's lower than Derrick Henry. So it wasn't like he went in there and every single time he touched the ball inside the 5, it turned into a touchdown. But he also has the advantage of Aaron Rodgers, where defenses have to be concerned inside the 5 that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball, and because that's what he's done his entire career is just pile up touchdowns inside the 5. So I believe that Aaron Jones will continue to be the goal line back and have great success there. So I don't have him, inside the where he finished last year or anywhere close to it, but I think that he can repeat as a very successful, still have some of those inconsistent games, which is why I have him down at 7, but I believe Aaron Jones is still going to be very, very good.
My worry is you bring up the inconsistent games. He had games where he just flat disappeared.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird for the running back too.
Very weird, yes.
To have, here's Aaron Jones. Week 1, he was the 52nd best running back. Week 9, he was the 45th. 12 and 13, 44th and 45th. At the position, but he finished number 2. That's because he had a couple monstrous games, those 3 touchdown, 4 touchdown type of games that really inflate the numbers. I think Aaron Jones is extremely talented, but he's on a team that does not want to make him the guy. They want to make him an efficient back who has the larger part of the running back by committee. But I wouldn't be surprised if Matt LaFleur brings in another running back. Didn't
he have a quote? At the combine.
Yeah, he said he wants another back to come in and help split the load. He's not all about giving Aaron Jones the work. And so for a guy that is 15th in carries while being 14th in yards per carry, so he's not like this crazy, uber efficient, run the ball 5.9 yards a carry type of guy. Those are good numbers. They're not bad. I mean, top 15. But not running back 2, not running back 5. So, I think where I've got him at running back 9, says he'll probably have a few more touchdown opportunities still than your average player who is down at 15th in volume. But his volume is still too low for me to really trust him. And the touchdowns were just, you talk about his opportunities inside the 5 could be repeatable. They could be, but that means that the touchdowns that came outside the 5 almost certainly not repeatable.
Yeah. Joe Mixon comes in at number 9. I have him up at number 7. Jason at 8. Mike at 12. You guys know how I feel about Joe Mixon.
I was shocked to see him all the way down at 7 for you.
Yeah, I was shocked too and disappointed in myself. But I have him at 7, which is the highest among the 3 of us. Last year he was number 1, according to Player Profiler, in evaded tackles, had the 5th most carries. This was a man on a team of Bill Murray's, and he was the only Monstar. I mean, every play he was doing his very best to overcome a very difficult situation. 278 carries, over 1,100 yards, just 5 touchdowns. That's a number that can change with an offense that can move the ball a little bit more, and a number that's where Mixon ended up last year. I really do think that you can have improvement even though you're going into a rookie quarterback situation. I think you will see improvement. You've got a second year of a rookie head coach, and I'm a big Joe Mixon fan. I think there are only a handful of guys that can carry the ball 300 times. He only caught the ball 35 times last year, which was down from the year before. But those numbers, we know he's capable of doing a lot more in the passing game. So with that offensive line last year, I'm a big fan of Joe Mixon as the Dalvin Cook of this year.
Sure. I'm on the side. I have him at 12. Like you said, I have him the lowest because I just don't know what to believe about Joe Mixon, where his season is 2 completely different seasons. You had before the bye week, he was not just bad, he was droppable. He was the running back 31, averaging 8 fantasy points a game. You could have dropped Joe Mixon in week 5 and up through his bye week thought, I made the right decision because that I dropped him. I don't have to keep playing him. He's just hurting my team. And then after the bye week, he just absolutely exploded. His volume went through the roof. Before the bye, he was at 12.5 carries for 40 yards a game. That jumped up to 22 carries, over 100 rushing yards per game. It's And that's what I'm saying. I don't know what to believe about Joe Mixon. I believe he's a very, very talented running back. Gio Bernard is still there. He got a 2-year extension before the season started last year. I looked at because we're all projecting Joe Burrow to be the quarterback of this team. We have no reason to believe otherwise. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he caught a lot of passes, but when you look at he only had 13.5% of the receptions, because I couldn't find targets for Clyde Edwards, but 13.5% of the receptions, which is I don't know. And once again, that's just I'm trying to look at a quarterback and his tendencies, not saying what the Cincinnati offense is going to be, because the Cincinnati offense was we don't really throw it to the running back. Only 45 targets on the season for Joe Mixon, and Mixon played all 16 games. And Andy Dalton played. Like it's wild to remember this team with the first overall pick, and it seemed like they had just completely moved away from Andy Dalton. Dalton played in 13 games. And they were just I don't know what to believe about Joe Mixon.
Yeah, how many games did he play the majority of the games? Because obviously he got pulled at one point and then put back at one point. The real issue I have here, which is narrative driven, not my preference, but it's echoing what you're talking about, Mike. The first half of the season, week 1, this was not a team that was out there thinking they're going after the number 1 pick. They went out to Seattle and gave them fits and thought that they were going to be a decent team, hopefully maybe try for the playoffs, and then things started imploding. They got a bunch of injuries. AJ Green didn't get back
their
on the
offensive
field.
line was atrocious.
Absolutely. Yes. And so, that first half of the year when they were being what they wanted to be, Joe Mixon was not very involved and sucked. Now, the second half of the year, at that point, they knew they're going after the number 1 pick. They're playing for several of those games their backup quarterback who sucks, who couldn't throw the ball, and they'll be down. I mean, at that point, you watch these games.
That was only 3 games. Andy Dalton, in the games he played 100% of the offensive snaps.
But you'll watch some of those games where they're down multiple scores in the second half, and they're just handing the ball off.
Well,
every play, because they got the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with the contention that they were doing what they wanted to do for the first 8 games of the year. I mean, part of that problem with Joe Mixon was he had 6 carries in week 1. He had 8 carries in week 6. He had 10 carries in week 7. What you're saying is right. From week 10 on, they just gave him the football. I mean, he just didn't have the football before that. So to me, that we've seen this guy finish in the top 10 a year ago. We saw him finish at 13 last year on the worst team in football. So going from 13 to 7 on the basis of the second half of the year is why I make that jump. And they've strengthened their offensive line as well. So if they liked what they got from Mixon over the back half of the year, I'd be really surprised to see some sort of regression from Mixon's second half if the team is taking a step forward, which is why I give him a little bit more credit. And Jason, you have him at 8 as well. So
yeah, I don't hate Joe Mixon at all, but you could also make the argument that the team figured out how to utilize him better as the season went on, and that should continue. The good news is the Bengals have gone hard.
Who's the other
after
quarterback
their
they
defense.
Started?
Oh gosh,
Finley?
Yes, Ryan Finley.
Oh man, those are bad. Those are some Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback days.
But the Bengals have gone out in free agency and they were one of the biggest winners on at least one side of the ball. Their defense got a ton better, and so that is probably good news for Joe Mixon being able to continue to get the ball while they're not trying to get the number 1 pick.
All right, and we've just talked about this guy rounding out our top 10. We talked about him on the Tuesday show quite a bit. Some of the reasons that we're big fans this year. Kenyon Drake comes in at number 10 overall. David Johnson is no longer a part of the Arizona Cardinals offense. Kenyon Drake was incredible to end the season. This is an offense with Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray that is growing up, certainly, and DeAndre Hopkins' addition only helps that. They also secured the right tackle, and I would guess that their first-round pick is going to be an offensive lineman.
Yep.
That would be where I'd put my money right now. So Drake ended up at number 10, versatile pass catcher. This is just where he ended up on our ranks. Do you guys have anything you want to add to kind of some of the discussions we talked about on Tuesday?
Just if you want to hear me talk about Drake, Tuesday's show is still available.
He was the RB4 from week 9 on, for context, in the Arizona offense.
He was the running back 4, but he also had his bye week during that stretch. So he was the running back 3 on a points per game basis. Only 2
There
better
you
were
go.
Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. So he was unbelievable.
So we're going to get into some more running back rankings coming up on our next episode. Probably some more interesting debates, too, about some of these guys that our opinions differ on quite a bit. Maybe some players that we're looking at taking that leap, making that tier jump from being somebody that was an RB2 type of player to having
Very
RB1
excited.
potential.
Very excited to talk running back 12, Frank Gore.
Oh, no, he's not your 12, is he? No. He's everybody's 12 forever. That's what he
Yep.
is. They
He is infinite.
retire that finish.
He is all.
in
Yeah,
the
there's
name
no
of-
more running back 12. It just
It
got
just goes from 11 to 13.
That's like a jersey retirement. You
Yes,
can't
they
finish
retire
at
the
running
finish.
back 12 anymore.
Yeah, you can't finish at tight end 12 anymore either. Jason Witten has claimed it. That's where.
well, he still can. He's still got a job right now.
That's true. He does. We want to thank Pristine Auction, by the way, for supporting the show. Great company. Go check them out. A Dalvin Cook signed jersey yesterday, $85.99. That's pristineauction.com. Use the code BALLERS, and you get a $10 credit. So
For
I think that'll do
dollars.
it for today's show. I'll be interested to hear some feedback from the Foot Clan on these top 10 consensus running backs and look forward to this next episode as well. So thank you for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, make sure you stay
Man, our
safe.
studios look good.
They do. See you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.